I never expected a single evening to change everything. One cold afternoon, I saw a little girl scavenging through trash, shivering and alone, and something inside me stirred, a protective instinct I hadn't felt since my wife died. I offered her a warm meal, not knowing that the next day she would return with a secret that would turn my world upside down. The weight of her vulnerability, the danger she faced, and the chance to protect her pushed me beyond fear, grief, and doubt. Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed your life? If yes, like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. The apartment was too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your chest, makes your chest ache, and reminds you that someone is missing. My daughter had left for school 15 minutes ago, humming something about a spelling test, and now the silence was sharp. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. The alarm clock ticked loudly, but it wasn't the sound that bothered me. It was the emptiness around it. I rubbed my eyes and tried to focus. Bills stacked like little towers on the counter, a cruel reminder that life wasn't waiting for me to catch up. My paycheck barely covered rent, and groceries were an exercise in math I never wanted to do. My late wife's picture on the wall caught my eye, her smile frozen in time. How did we get here? I whispered to myself. The answer didn't come. I swung my legs over the bed, feeling the chill of the floor. I could smell the faint aroma of coffee from last night, bitter and burnt. I poured myself a cup, but the warmth did nothing to ease the emptiness inside. "Hey, Dad," I muttered to the apartment, hoping for an answer. None came. I frowned and slumped into the chair, my hands wrapped around the mug. I couldn't stop thinking about how fast everything had changed, from a happy family of 3 to me, barely keeping us afloat. My daughter was brave. She didn't complain, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I decided I couldn't sit here any longer. I had to move, even if it was just to feel the world outside. I grabbed my coat and keys and left, locking the door behind me. The air hit me like a slap, cold, raw, and unforgiving. I walked a few blocks to the park, lost in thought, my hands shoved deep in my pockets. That's when I saw her, a little girl, hunched over, digging through a trash bin. Her clothes were ragged, too thin for the cold morning. She didn't notice me at first, or maybe she was used to being invisible. But then her eyes met mine, wide and cautious, a flicker of something I couldn't name passing between us. Something tugged at my chest. "Hey," I said softly, not wanting to scare her. She froze, then glanced down. I took a careful step closer. "You cold?" I asked. She shook her head but didn't move. I noticed a redness on her cheeks, the way her fingers were stiff from the cold. My stomach twisted. I wanted to just scoop her up and take her home, but I didn't. I didn't know her. I didn't know anything about her life except what I could see. Hunger, fear, loneliness. "Do you want some coffee? Or something warm?" I tried again. She hesitated, then nodded slightly, eyes still wary. I smiled, though it felt weak. "Okay, come on, just for a minute." We walked to a nearby cafe. The little bell above the door jingled as we entered. The warmth inside was immediate, comforting. She kept her distance but didn't run. I ordered hot chocolate for her, coffee black for me. She stared at the cup like it was treasure. "You don't have a mom or dad?" I asked gently, try not to sound intrusive. Her shoulders hunched. "No." I nodded slowly. "I see." The words sounded hollow even to me. I wanted to ask more to know why, to fix it, but I didn't. Sometimes questions were heavier than answers. We sat together, sipping our drinks. She didn't speak much, just watched people pass by the window. I stole glances at her, memorizing the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she traced the rim of her cup. She reminded me of my daughter, innocent, wary, trying to survive a world that didn't always care. "Thank you," she finally whispered. I shook my head. "Don't thank me yet. I haven't done anything." But I felt something shift inside me, a protective instinct, immediate and fierce. I didn't know her story, but I wanted to be someone she could trust. I wanted to make a difference, even if just a small one. The bell rang as I led her outside. "Stay safe, okay?" I said. She nodded, eyes wide, then turned and walked toward a shelter down the street. I watched her disappear around the corner, and my chest tightened. I couldn't stop thinking about her all the way to work. The image of her small, shivering figure haunted me, her eyes like mirrors reflecting the parts of me I didn't want to face. I knew I had to find her again after work. Something about her pulled at me, more than pity, more than curiosity. I didn't know why, but I couldn't shake the feeling that our paths were meant to cross again, and I had a feeling tomorrow wouldn't let me ignore her. I couldn't stop thinking about her all day. Every customer I served, every stack of papers I sorted, every ringing phone. It all blurred together while my mind kept circling back to that little girl, shivering near the trash bin that morning. By the time I clocked out, the sun had dipped low, and the streets were coated in the soft orange of evening. I grabbed my coat and started walking, eyes scanning every corner, every doorway. "Come on, where are you?" I muttered under my breath. My stomach knotted with worry. Was I being crazy? I didn't even know her name. What if she didn't want to follow her? But still, I couldn't ignore the pull inside me, the need to make sure she was safe. I finally spotted her huddled against the wall of the small cafe, hugging her knees like a frightened animal. My heart clenched. "Hey!" I called softly. Her head shot up, eyes wide, guarded. "Hi!" she whispered. "You cold?" I asked. Her shoulders stiffened. She nodded barely noticeably. I hesitated. "Do you want to maybe grab something warm? Just for a little while?" She didn't answer right away, just stared at me. I waited, trying not to seem impatient. The silence felt long, but she finally nodded, almost imperceptibly. Relief hit me, but I hid it. I didn't want her to feel like she owed me anything. Inside the cafe, warmth hit me instantly. I breathed it in and glanced at her. She kept her distance, but the trembling in her hands told me everything I needed to know. I ordered hot chocolate for her and black coffee for myself. She stared at the cup like it was a treasure. "You come here often?" I asked, trying to keep the tone casual. She shook her head, eyes darting away. "No, not really." I nodded slowly. "I see. Well, I just thought you might like a warm drink." She sipped her chocolate carefully, like she was afraid it might disappear. I watched her, memorizing the little things. How her hair kept falling into her eyes, how she tucked it behind her ears, the way she hugged the cup close to her chest. I saw pieces of my own daughter in her, the same cautious innocence, the same fragile trust. "So you live around here?" I asked gently. Her lips pressed together. I don't really have anywhere." My chest tightened. I wanted to ask more, to understand how a child could be alone like this, but I swallowed the words. Sometimes you had to let someone open up at their own pace. "Okay," I said softly. "You don't have to tell me everything. I want to make sure you're okay right now." She nodded again, almost imperceptibly, then took another careful sip. I smiled faintly, feeling both relief and a strange ache I couldn't explain. "Thank you," she whispered finally. I shook my head. "Don't thank me yet. I'm not doing anything heroic." But inside, I knew I wanted to do more. I wanted to give her a little corner of safety in a world that hadn't given her much. We talked quietly while we ate. She didn't say much, just small fragments, about being hungry, about being alone, about little hopes she barely let herself speak. I shared tiny pieces about my own life, careful not to overwhelm her. "You have a daughter?" she asked, eyes curious. I nodded. "Yeah, she's at school now." I swallowed, the image of her tiny face coming to mind. She's smart, strong. Sometimes I think she's braver than me. She smiled faintly. "I wish I had someone like that." "Maybe you do now," I said softly, unsure she'd trust me yet. She looked down at her cup, silent, and I let the moment pass. When it was time to leave, I walked her to the shelter a few blocks away. She followed quietly, hugging herself against the cold again. I felt a strange emptiness in my chest, a mix of relief and helplessness. I wanted to do more, but I didn't know how, or if I even should. "Stay safe," I said, kneeling slightly so I was closer to her height. She nodded. "I will." The moment lingered, heavy and fragile, and then she walked inside. I watched the door swing shut behind her and felt a strange hollow ache. I didn't know her name. I didn't know her story, but I already felt responsible. By the time I got home, the apartment was quiet again. My daughter long since finished with homework. She looked up at me, curiosity in her eyes. "Dad, you look sad. Are you okay?" she asked softly. I knelt down, pulling her into a quick hug. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice cracked slightly. "Just thinking. Tomorrow I'll tell you why." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the little girl. Her eyes, her shivering hands, the fragile trust she'd placed in me. It stayed with me like a whisper I couldn't shake. I knew I had to find her again. I didn't know how or if I should, but my heart wouldn't let it go. And I had a feeling tomorrow would bring answers. Answers I wasn't sure I was ready for. I couldn't stop thinking about her all night. Even as I tucked my daughter into bed, the image of that small, shivering girl clung to me like a shadow. I told her I'd explain tomorrow, but I wasn't sure how I would. All I knew was that something about her felt urgent, fragile, and entirely out of my control. The next morning, a soft knock at the door jolted me awake. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hurried over and opened it. There she was. Her coat hung loosely over a small frame, the hood pulled up, hiding most of her face. Her hands trembled, and clutched in them was a small envelope. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, unsure, vulnerable. "Hey," I said softly, bending down slightly. "Come in." She stepped inside hesitantly, her eyes scanning the apartment as if afraid she'd be seen by the wrong people. I closed the door behind her and guided her to the couch. "Sit," I said gently. "It's okay." Her hands shook as she handed me the envelope. I need you to see this," she whispered. I took it carefully, feeling the weight of the paper. My heart started to pound. I opened it slowly, my eyes scanning the contents. A series of photos, notes, and addresses stared back at me. Evidence that her life was in danger. Someone was looking for her. Someone who wanted to hurt her. My chest tightened. I had expected hunger, loneliness, maybe a rough home life, but not this. Not an immediate threat to a child's safety. My hands trembled slightly as I refolded the papers. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We'll figure this out. I don't know how yet, but we will." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please? I can't go back there. I don't have anywhere else." I swallowed hard. My protective instincts kicked in immediately, stronger than I expected. "You're safe here, for now. I promise." A creak from the hallway made me glance over. My daughter was standing there, peeking around the corner, curiosity and concern written across her face. "Dad, what's going on?" she asked quietly. I shook my head, giving her a small, reassuring smile. "It's nothing for you to worry about right now, sweetie. Just help me make some tea." She nodded, retreating just a bit, but I could feel her watching us, sensing the tension in the room. I turned back to the girl, who was wringing her hands nervously. "Listen," I said, lowering my voice. "I don't know everything yet. I don't know who's involved or what they want. But I know one thing. I'm going to make sure you're safe." "Okay." She nodded quickly, relief washing over her features. I ran my hands over my face. How had it come to this? A child, standing at my doorstep, holding evidence of danger I barely knew how to address. My mind raced through possibilities, calling the police, contacting social services, hiding her somewhere. Every option felt inadequate. I can't go to the police," she said suddenly, her voice small but firm. They'll make it worse. Please." I swallowed again, heart hammering. I had to respect her wishes while keeping her safe. It was a delicate balance I wasn't sure I could manage. "Okay," I said softly. "We'll find another way. But you need to trust me. Can you do that?" She nodded, clutching the envelope like it was a lifeline. I glanced at my daughter, who had returned with 2 steaming mugs of tea. She placed one in front of me and the other near the girl, her small hands lingering for a moment. "Be careful, Dad," she whispered. I gave her a small nod, swallowing the lump in my throat. I will I promised. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the gentle clink of mugs and the faint hum of the radiator. I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. My own daughter, this girl, and the fragile line we were walking between safety and danger. I finally spoke. You need to tell me everything you can, but only what you feel safe sharing. Start with the basics, names, places, anyone you think might be dangerous. She hesitated, eyes darting nervously, but slowly began to speak. Bits and pieces came out in halting whispers. Names she had overheard, addresses of people she feared, small details I could piece together into a picture. My stomach nodded with every word. I scribbled notes quietly, careful not to alarm her. Every detail was a lifeline, a map I needed to navigate this mess. My mind raced. How could I protect her without overstepping, without making things worse? The moral weight pressed down on me, but I couldn't ignore it. After a while, I stood and stretched, running my hands over my face. All right, I said, we need a plan. Something safe. Something nobody expects. But not yet, we'll figure out together. The girl nodded, still trembling, but a tiny flicker of trust appeared in her eyes. I looked at my daughter, standing quietly in the hallway, sensing everything. This is going to be okay, I whispered to both of them. I promise. We'll get through this. Together. And in that moment, I realized just how high the stakes were, and how much courage I would need to face them. The weight of the envelope never left my pocket that morning. I kept thinking about the girl and what she had shown me. I couldn't shake the images, the whispers of danger. My daughter had left for school, and I was supposed to focus on work. But I couldn't. I dialed my friend Mark, my fingers trembling slightly. Mark, hey, you busy? I asked when he answered. For you? Never. What's up? His voice was casual, but I knew him well enough to hear the tension in mine. There's a situation, I said slowly. I need someone I can trust. It's delicate. Delicate how? I swallowed. It's about a kid. Someone's trying to hurt her. I need to know if there's any family I can contact, anyone who might be able to help discreetly. Mark was quiet for a moment. All right, send me whatever you have. I'll see what I can dig up. I hung up, my chest tightening. This was already risky. I was dragging someone else into my mess, and God only knew how far this danger reached. But I couldn't ignore it, not when a child's life was involved. By the afternoon, I slipped out of work under pretense of a meeting. My head was buzzing with possibilities, my heart racing. I had a few leads from Mark and had mapped out where we might find answers, and each step felt heavier than the last. The girl's trust in me had grown. She'd spoken more freely that morning, her small hand brushing against mine once when she was nervous. I felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness that terrified me. You trust me, right? I asked her as we walked down a quiet street. Just the two of us. She nodded, looking up at me. I think I can. That's good, I said softly, because I'm not letting anything happen to you. Her lips curved in a small, tentative smile. I hadn't realized how much I needed her to trust me, not just for her safety, but because I felt alive, needed. The thought made me uncomfortable, an emotion I wasn't used to feeling since my wife died. Back home that evening, I watched my daughter setting the table for dinner. She glanced at me once, reading my exhaustion, then focused on her task. Dad, you okay? She asked quietly. I forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. She didn't push further, but her eyes lingered on me. I couldn't shake the guilt. Was I putting her in danger by getting involved with this girl? My mind went in circles. What if someone followed me home? What if they saw my daughter? I poured myself a glass of water and sat down, trying to breathe. My nerves frayed with each passing minute. Work had piled up, emails unanswered, calls missed. But I couldn't stop. I had to prioritize her safety over everything else. Later, I returned to my apartment to check on the girl. She had settled into a quiet corner, playing with a small notebook she carried everywhere. You okay? I asked softly. She looked up, her eyes trusting but cautious. I think so. Thanks for helping. You don't have to thank me, I said. I'm just doing what I should. But you didn't have to, she said, a hint of awe in her voice. Most adults wouldn't. I swallowed hard. She made me feel proud and helpless at the same time. Proud that I could be someone she could rely on. Helpless because the danger we were navigating was beyond anything I'd imagined. I spent the next hour quietly reviewing notes, mapping out safe routes, potential contacts, and backup plans. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every shadow outside the window made my heart race. The moral wave it pressed on me, but I kept pushing forward. Every decision mattered. One misstep could cost her safety, even her life. Later that night, I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling. My daughter slept quietly beside me, unaware of the storm brewing outside our walls. I felt a growing connection to both of them. The girl's fragile trust, my daughter's quiet concern, and the responsibility that stretched across both lives. I can't fail them, I whispered to myself. I just can't. The girl's small face flashed in my mind again. I imagined the fear in her eyes if anything went wrong, and I shivered. My heart raced, my stomach twisted, but I also felt something stronger than fear. Determination. I couldn't ignore this. I wouldn't. I finally leaned back, exhausted but alert. The decisions I was making now would shape everything. Her safety, my daughter's security, and my own moral compass. I knew the risks were high. I knew it could all fall apart. But I also knew I had no choice. If I faltered, someone innocent could pay the price. And I couldn't let that happen. Tomorrow, I thought I'd have to take the next step, one that could either save her or break us all. I couldn't stop thinking about her, even as I poured myself a glass of water that evening. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the heater, and I found myself staring at the wall, remembering her small hands trembling that morning. She had started to speak more, slowly, cautiously, but her words carried weight. I needed to hear them, because her life was no longer something I could ignore. You ever dream? I asked her quietly as we sat at the small kitchen table. She blinked, unsure. Dream like sleep? No, I said, shaking my head. Dreams. Things you hope for. Things you want in life. She thought for a long moment, tracing her finger along the table. I want a home, a place where I'm safe. And I want to go to school, learn things. Her voice was soft, almost lost, but I felt it all the way down to my stomach. I nodded slowly. I understand that. I lost my wife a few years ago. My daughter and we've had to figure out how to survive without her. Some days are easier than others. She looked up at me, wide-eyed, not saying anything. I swallowed hard. Some days, I feel like I'm failing her, like I'm not enough. But I keep going because I have to. I don't have a choice. Her lips quivered, and she shifted closer to me, just enough to let me know she trusted me. My heart twisted. Protecting her felt urgent, immediate, like the world was narrowing to this fragile little girl in front of me. I had to keep her safe. No excuses. You're not alone, I said softly, almost a whisper. I'm here, and I promise, I'll do everything I can to make sure nothing happens to you. Her eyes glistened, a mix of relief and disbelief. She didn't speak, but the tiny nod she gave me was enough. I felt a strange, protective warmth wash over me, and I realized something I hadn't admitted even to myself. Helping her wasn't just about duty anymore. It gave my life purpose again, a reason beyond just surviving for my daughter. We sat together for a while, sharing small pieces of ourselves. I told her about my daughter, about the nights I cried silently when I thought she was asleep. She listened, never interrupting, and slowly, I realized that bridging this gap between adult and child was healing something in me too. My grief felt lighter, tempered by responsibility and connection. But the quiet intimacy of the evening couldn't erase the gnawing anxiety I felt. Every time the window rattled, every unfamiliar sound on the street, I flinched. My stomach tightened, my thoughts spiraling. Someone was watching her. I could feel in the way she glanced over her shoulder whenever we walked outside, in the way she flinched at sudden movements. "Dad," she whispered suddenly, "do you think they'll find me?" I shook my head, forcing a calm I didn't feel. No, Not if we're careful. We'll make sure of it. She clutched my hand, small and fragile, and I felt an urgency I hadn't experienced in years. Protecting my daughter was instinct. Protecting her felt like a calling. Later, as I tucked my daughter into bed, I thought about the risks I was taking. Was I putting both of them in danger? Could I keep them safe? My hand shook slightly as I ran them over her hair. "You'll be okay," I whispered, more myself than to her. Back at the kitchen table, the girl sat quietly, her notebook open but untouched. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know," I said, sliding a chair closer. "It's okay to be scared. We just have to be smart and careful and trust each other." Her eyes met mine, full of uncertainty, but also something else. Trust, maybe hope. I took a deep breath, feeling a weight settle on my shoulders. This wasn't just about keeping her alive. It was about showing her she could trust someone again, that not everyone would hurt her, that she could survive. I caught myself smiling, a small, tired smile. "You're braver than you think," I said, "and we're going to get through this together." A sudden noise outside made us both flinch. My heart raced, and I moved instinctively to the window, peering out. Shadows shifted along the street. My stomach twisted. The danger was closer than I'd thought. I turned back to her, kneeling so we were eye to eye. "Listen," I said firmly, "we have to be careful from now on. No unnecessary risks. You stay close to me, okay?" She nodded. "I will." I ran a hand over my face, exhausted but resolute. Helping her was no longer a choice. It was a responsibility I had to bear, and somehow it gave me a purpose I hadn't felt in years. My grief, my fear, my uncertainty, all of it funneled into protecting her. Tomorrow, I realized we would have to take the next step. I didn't know exactly what it would look like, but I knew it had to be deliberate, calculated, and brave. The stakes were higher than ever. And yet, even with that fear pressing down, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I would not let her down. Not her, not my daughter, not myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive, ready to face the danger head on. The night was heavy with tension as we followed the trail the girl had described. Every street corner, every alleyway, made my stomach knot tighter. I glanced at my daughter, walking beside me. She didn't speak, but I could feel her presence like armor around me. Her small hand brushed mine once, and I squeezed it, drawing courage from her steadiness. "You sure about this?" she whispered. I nodded. "We have to. There's no other choice." The girl walked just ahead of us, clutching her notebook like a shield. Her steps were hesitant, but she didn't run. I kept my hand close, ready to grab her if needed. My heart hammered, not just from fear, but from the raw protective instinct that had taken over me completely. We reached an old building she had mentioned, one with darkened windows and a faint smell of mildew and neglect. My stomach twisted. This was it, the place that held pieces of her past she had barely whispered about. "I'll go first," I said, crouching to her level. "Stay close. Both of you." The door creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing through the empty hall. Shadows shifted in corners I couldn't see clearly. I swallowed hard, my hands clenching into fists. Whoever had hurt her before could be here, could be watching. I had to be careful, but I couldn't hesitate. "Hello?" I called, voice low but firm. No answer, just a faint rustle of papers and distant dripping water. "Be careful," my daughter whispered. Her voice was small, but it strengthened me. We moved slowly, following a trail of scattered notes and personal items. Each clue revealed more of the danger she had faced. Faces, names, locations, fragments of her life that made my chest ache. The anger rose in me, fierce and unrelenting. How could anyone treat a child this way? Suddenly, a figure stepped from the shadows, blocking the hallway. I froze for a split second. Fear surged through me, but then I felt my daughter's hand on my arm, steadying me. The figure spoke, voice low and threatening. "You shouldn't be here." "I'm not leaving until she's safe," I said, voice shaking but firm. "I don't care who you are or what you think you've done. She's coming with me." The figure laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. And you'll stop me? I didn't answer. My instincts kicked in. I moved forward slowly, keeping the girl behind me. My anger and fear fueled me, sharper than anything I had felt in years. This was no longer just about helping. It was about protecting, surviving, and standing up for someone who had no other voice. My daughter stayed close, silent, but I could feel her courage, like a quiet drumbeat urging me on. Together, we were stronger than I'd expected. A tense standoff followed, words exchanged with careful precision, threats hanging in the air. I had to think quickly. Every move, every word mattered. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for safety, for her life, for my daughter, for the fragile trust that had formed between us. Finally, I saw an opening. I grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her toward the exit, my daughter right beside me. The figure lunged, but the momentum was in our favor. We burst into night air, lungs burning, hearts pounding, the streetlights blurring around us. We didn't stop running until the building was far behind us, until the city noise swallowed our fear, until the girl looked up at me, eyes wide but safe. "You're safe now," I said, voice rough with exhaustion. "I promise." She clutched my hand tightly, trembling, but I could see relief flickering in her eyes. My daughter wrapped an arm around me, and I realized something profound. This little unit, unconventional as it was, had become a shield for each other. We were more than a family. We were a force. We returned to the apartment, exhausted, voices low, hearts still racing. I watched the girl settle on the couch, her body curling like she was trying to take up as little space as possible, and my chest ached. The danger had passed for now, but I knew the emotional scars would linger. They already had. I knelt beside her. "You did really well," I said softly. "You were brave." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Thanks for not giving up on me." "I could never give up on you," I replied. "Not now, not ever." My daughter climbed onto the couch beside her, small arms wrapping around both of us. I felt the weight of relief, fear, and love crashing together. My hands rested on both of them, grounding myself in this fragile moment of safety. Later, I sat in the kitchen, letting the adrenaline fade, trying to breathe. I thought about everything we had uncovered, the lies, the threats, the hidden past. I had protected her tonight. Yes, but the world outside the apartment was still unpredictable. The risks hadn't vanished. And yet, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Clarity. Courage didn't mean absence of fear. It meant standing firm even when your heart is pounding, even when your mind screams at you to run. I had done that tonight, and I would do it again if I had to. But I also knew the journey wasn't over. The immediate danger was gone, but the path ahead, healing, trust, and safety, was just beginning. I looked at my daughter and the girl, both asleep now, and whispered softly, more to myself than anyone else, "We'll get through this. Together." The apartment felt quiet in a different way that morning. Not the hollow, pressing silence I had known before, but a soft, settling calm. The girl was sitting at the small kitchen table, coloring with a set of crayons I had found in the back of a drawer. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, her lips pursed. I watched her for a moment, heart tightening. She looked lighter, safer. "Can I see?" my daughter asked, peeking over her shoulder. "Sure," the girl said, handing her the paper with a small, shy smile. It was the first real smile I had seen from her that wasn't laced with fear. I leaned against the counter, rubbing my face. The adrenaline from last night had faded, leaving me raw and tired. I questioned everything I had done. Had I been careful enough? Had I missed something that could have put her in danger? The self-doubt gnawed at me like a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. "You okay, Dad?" my daughter asked softly, sensing my unease. I forced a smile. "I will be. Just thinking." She nodded, and for a moment, I marveled at her quiet empathy. She had witnessed fear, courage, and danger in the past 24 hours, yet she carried herself with a calm I envied. It reminded me that resilience wasn't just mine to bear. It ran through her as well. Later, I watched the girl as she laughed at a joke my daughter made about the crayons. The sound was light, almost musical, a fragile thing I want to bottle up and keep forever. I realized she was beginning to trust, beginning to believe that someone could care for her without expecting anything in return. "Do you like it here?" I asked quietly, keeping my voice gentle. She looked up at me, eyes bright. "Yes, I like it. I feel safe." The words hit me harder than I expected. Safe. That's all any child should ever need. I wanted to promise her it would always be this way, but I knew life didn't work like that. All I could do was stay vigilant, stay present, and let her know she wasn't alone. I took a seat at the table, joining them. "You know," I said softly, "I didn't think I could ever feel hopeful again after everything. But seeing you laugh, seeing you start to trust, it makes me feel like maybe I can." She glanced up at me, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "You feel hopeful?" I nodded. "Yeah, I guess I do. It's strange. I never thought a child could teach me that." We spent the afternoon quietly together. I helped the girl with a puzzle, my daughter cheering them both on. Every laugh, every shared glance was a stitch in a fragile tapestry we were slowly weaving, a tapestry of trust, safety, and love born from struggle. At one point, I caught the girl watching my daughter carefully, her small hands folded in her lap. She hesitated, then asked softly, She really cares about me?" I nodded. "Yes, and I care too. We're all learning how to care for each other, together." The simplicity of the statement surprised me. It was profound. It reminded me that love didn't need perfection, just presence, just the willingness to stay, to protect, to hope. That evening, as I prepared dinner, the girl lingered near me, helping as best she could. She smiled easily now, shared small stories, and even teased my daughter about spilling a little sauce on the counter. The weight of fear I had carried for her had lifted slightly, replaced by a cautious optimism. I caught myself thinking about my wife, how she would have encouraged me to open my heart again, how she would have hugged both girls and whispered that everything would be okay. I let the memory comfort me. Helping this girl wasn't replacing the past. It was honoring it by giving someone else a chance at safety and love. Later, we all sat at the table together. My daughter reached across to hold the girl's hand gently, and I realized something profound. We were no longer just three individuals navigating loss and danger. We were a family, unconventional and messy, but real, bound by choice, care, and shared struggle. After dinner, I cleaned up quietly while they played a quiet game on the floor. I paused, hands on the counter, looking at the small scene. The girls' laughter mingled with my daughter's, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. A circle of love had formed in this tiny apartment, born from fear, survival, and a conscious decision to care for one another. Yet beneath the peace, a thread of unease lingered. Danger hadn't vanished completely. Shadows of the past could still reach her, and I knew the journey ahead would demand vigilance. But for tonight, at least, we had reclaimed a small measure of safety and trust. I sat down with them for a moment, letting the quiet wrap around us. "I'm proud of both of you," I whispered. "You've taught me more than I can ever say." The girl leaned against my shoulder, a gesture of trust one didn't take lightly. My daughter rested her head lightly against mine too, and I felt the weight of responsibility, love, and hope intertwining. We were healing together, slowly but surely, mending wounds that had once felt insurmountable. And as I watched them both, I knew that our lives had already changed in ways none of us could have anticipated. The scars of fear and loss would remain, but so would this newfound family, this bond forged in courage, care, and the choice to stay. Tonight, I whispered to myself quietly, as if to seal a promise. We are together. We are safe. We are learning to love again. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, soft and golden, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of calm settle over the apartment. My daughter and the girl were sitting at the small kitchen table, sharing breakfast and chatting quietly. Their laughter was tentative, cautious, but it carried a warmth that had been missing for so long. I poured myself a cup of coffee, hands still slightly trembling from the residual tension of the past days. The envelope, the threats, the fear, they were behind us now. The girl's secret had led us to an unexpected opportunity. a safe place for her to start over, a chance to leave the shadows behind, to step into a life where she didn't have to look over her shoulder. I looked at her across the table. She smiled at me, small and shy, but there was something different in her eyes. Trust, relief, hope. It struck me how fragile that hope was, and yet how powerful it had become. "You're really going to be okay," I said softly. She nodded, her small hands clutching a spoon tightly. "Thanks for everything." "No," I corrected gently. "It's not just me. You've been brave, too. Braver than you know." My daughter reached across, squeezing the girl's hand, and I felt the weight of family in that simple gesture. We weren't just three people under one roof. We were a unit, a small circle of love forged through fear, loss, and choice. I sank into the chair, letting the quiet of the morning wash over me. I thought about the journey that brought us here, the empty apartment, the scraps of life we'd pieced together, the nights spent worrying, planning, and fighting for someone else's safety. Every moment of fear, every sleepless night, every heartbeat filled with uncertainty had shaped me. I had discovered a resilience I didn't know I possessed. "You okay, Dad?" my daughter asked, her voice soft, a weird reflection in my gaze. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I am. It's strange. I've been so focused on keeping everyone safe that I forgot. I could feel lighter, stronger." The girl tilted her head, curiosity flickering. "You feel lighter?" I smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile. "Yeah, because helping you, it made me realize something important. Sometimes saving someone else saves you too." She seemed to consider that, and then a small, genuine smile crossed her face. It was fleeting, but it carried the weight of survival, trust, and a chance at new life. We spent the morning preparing for her transition, packing a few belongings, making lists, talking quietly about her hopes and what she wanted from this next chapter. I watched my daughter helping her gently, patiently, and I realized that she too had grown. Her empathy had deepened, her understanding of others' struggles becoming something tangible in her actions. I stepped back for a moment, taking in the scene. The apartment no longer felt empty. The walls held laughter, conversation, and shared memories. It was messy, imperfect, and yet alive. This was what family could be, not defined solely by blood, but by love, trust, and the choices we made to care for one another. Later, I held the girl's hands in mine, steadying her as she prepared to step into the world beyond our apartment. "I know it's scary," I said softly, "but you're ready, and you'll always have a place here with us if you need it." Her eyes glistened. I won't forget." "You don't have to," I said. "Just go forward. Be brave. Be yourself." We walked her to the car that would take her to safety. My daughter and I flanked her, silent but strong. I could feel the bond we had formed, unspoken, enduring, and resilient. It struck me that love didn't always arrive in grand gestures. Sometimes it was in holding a trembling hand, in standing beside someone when the world seemed determined to break them. Back inside the apartment, the quiet settled again, but it felt different this time. Not hollow, but reflective, full of possibility. My daughter climbed onto the couch, curling up beside me, and I realized I didn't feel the same emptiness I had when she was at school or when I was alone. The space we had shared with the girl had left its mark. Hope, warmth, and the realization that even in the darkest times, connection could heal. I poured another cup of coffee and sat by the window, looking out at the city waking up. I thought about everything we had endured. The fear, the grief, the small joys, and the lessons learned. I had discovered resilience in fatherhood, love in unexpected places, and hope where I had once felt none. My daughter rested her head on my shoulder. "We're going to be okay, right?" she whispered. I held her close, letting the morning light warm us both. "Yes," I said softly. "We're stronger than before, and together we can face whatever comes next." For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe it. The future was uncertain, yes, but we were ready, stronger, united, and in that I found a profound peace, a sense that, despite everything, life would still hold joy, love, and the chance to start again. Sometimes, I realized, saving someone else really does save you in the process. And standing there with my daughter, knowing the girl had a chance to live safely, I finally understood the depth of that truth.